what I want to do today, and for a few of these sessions, really get into the part of David Pellin's work that he called the triangle. So we have a triangle. And as I've said here previously, now let me come at it from a different way. The triangle is a part of our work that is about activity. It's how we move our lives ahead by taking action. It's how we can take action. It's how we can reach goals. It is, our tomorrow, because it's what we are doing. The triangle is about action and doing, the way the pendulum is about feelings. Both of them have a particular approach, but I think we can say always combines looking at the past in a way of knowing where we are in the present and knowing how we can move our life ahead in the future. So our work always has that sort of combination of past, present, and future. And the forward-looking part of Pellen work, I guess I want to make the triangle ambitious in the sense of this is how people can make a future for themselves. This is how young people can make a future for themselves. It's another way, it's a more immediate way of looking at purpose and feelings of accomplishment. And I want to start with the, before we take action, where we have thoughts about what that action is going to be. So at the top of the triangle, I'm calling reflection, which is, it might be momentary. I mean, there are times when we have to take action immediately. If we're driving and a car pulls out in front of us, we don't sort of think about what decision we're going to make. But there is a moment of reflection. There is a moment of, I've got to go there. I got to move the wheel. I got to swerve. That's an extreme example. Others, we have a pause, before we dive into the pool, fire the gun, yell at partner. So one of the ways this work is going forward, we're looking at action in terms, we're looking at actions and decisions in the triangle. And within that, we are looking at what are the decisions we are making about the goals we are setting for ourselves. And that's where I'm putting on that. We sort of go around triangles. We reflect, we make a decision. In that decision, we decide to put an effort toward a goal. That's the bottom part of the triangle. And the effort towards a goal in which we talk about accepted efforts and rejected efforts. And that's the part of the work that people might be most familiar with in terms of this. In the current CT manual, which is in the process of being revised and updated, this part of the work is called steps. But I want to go back to David Pellin's triangle. So we make a decision on what effort we're going to put into reaching this goal. And we in a way, we create our lives. We move our lives ahead by reaching goals, by setting goals and reaching them. At times that process is unconscious, just the times we make decisions that appear unconscious, that are unconscious. Or we're not making any decisions, but not making any decision in itself is a decision. So one of the things we're looking at is the process by which we make decisions. And that's the material I've been writing recently. And that is a material I hope to start putting on Facebook. And one of the things we're looking at in that side of in the decision side of the three-sided triangle is the different factors that go into making decisions and where those different factors come from. So on the decision side of things, on that side of the triangle, we are acting from a lot of unconscious memory links, as well as conscious memory links, as well as conscious awareness of or knowledge of what we have around us in terms of making this decision. But one of the things I'm trying to get at in this material I'm writing on decisions, which is new, which is the latest thing I've been working on, I'm looking at, okay, hi Cease, what are the factors that go into decision making? That's this. What we're looking at today is the triangle. We're going to be doing this for a few weeks, I hope, because it is how we set goals, reach goals, change our life, and move our life ahead by achieving goals, whether they're personal, political, a religious journey or a sporting journey. This is the, could say, the aspirational side of our work. David Pellin called it the triangle of activity and progress. And as I've said earlier, in the part of this work that is most perhaps familiar with people who've studied Pellin is not the triangle so much as accepted and rejected efforts.
Peter, Cease just asked to see the triangle again.
Oh, sorry.
Again.
Can you hold it? We can't see the, no, not closer. Well,
sorry. How am I doing?
Not good. I'm sorry. Okay, that's better. Now it says reflection. It's hard to read it.
Oh, okay. Reflection, decision, effort, goal, assessment. And then
Okay.
the bottom in red is accepted effort and rejected effort.
Okay, that we can't see it all.
Okay.
Hold it for a second. I was going to take a picture of it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so my recent work, my most recent work is the book I'm writing on decisions, which in the main, in a very, very rough form, I have finished, and I want to start putting on Facebook, excerpts of it on Facebook, excerpts from a work in progress. And I guess I want to talk here about decisions, because decisions are one thing that decisions are is the process by which we set goals for ourselves. The part of the work, I think, the part of this part of the work that many of us love, I know I do, is the concept of accepted efforts and rejected efforts, and how incredibly useful and powerful it can be. And I know we've done it previously on the forum, we'll be going over it again, even though today I'm mainly looking at decisions, but just to roughly revise that material. We have a goal, and the accepted effort is we are enjoying what we are doing. And enjoying is almost a stretched jargon word there. We accept the effort we are putting in. So it's the enjoyment of pain if we are climbing a mountain. I say the next bit, I hope, for sensitivity. A woman giving birth to a child, they are situations in which we go through a lot of pain to reach the goal. Whether the goal is the top of the mountain or the goal is having a baby. So when we say enjoying what we are doing, it's more than that. It has that subtlety that we accept, and the reason we use the word accepted effort, we accept the effort we are putting in. And in accepting the effort we are putting in, we have some satisfaction. Accepted effort is almost simply another way of talking about feelings of accomplishment. They're almost synonymous. And if we're in the accepted effort, we'll reach the goals we've set ourselves. If we're not, we won't. If we're in the rejected effort, we won't get there. And we talk in that part of the work, which you can tell I'm more sort of fluent with than the more recent material on decision. We talk turning rejected efforts into accepted efforts, by bringing in positivity to the rejected effort. We have a jargon word for that. We call it gimmicks. And the other side of it, we talk about protecting the accepted effort we have. That is a part of the work that has been developed, over all this time. So it does roll off really easily. Going back, and that's next time when we're talking about that side of the triangle. Today we're talking about that side of the triangle, making decisions, deciding what we are going to do. And yeah. Does someone want to come out, or will I keep going? I'll keep going. So when we're looking at decisions, we're looking at goal setting. But one of the ways I have been looking at decisions is how pervasive they are. The decisions we make is almost the life we have. And the other part of looking at decisions, which I have done in a quite philosophical and practical way, that's a bit, I think I would say it's a bit sort of wandering, because I think that's how we do make decisions. We make decisions with, in a sense, with all of our being, but so much of it is sort of unconscious. And I talk about decisions that almost different dimensions of them. One is short-term, middle-term, long-term, okay? What are the short-term consequences of the decision? What are the middle-term consequences of the decision? And what are the long-term consequences of decisions? Because when we get into those three dimensions, which on some level we do anyway, I think in some way the work on decisions is about almost bringing to the surface what people do anyway, and then putting a framework around it. Because if you delve into decisions with any tenacity, a whole lot of stuff comes up. You know, the unintended consequences. You know, the long-term unintended consequences of a short-term solution. You know, a good decision to, yes, a decision to, a family makes a decision to, and this is where the life force would come in. The family makes a decision to take a risky vacation. You know, go somewhere we've never been before. You know, go somewhere we're not sure about. Rather than the familiar. And the short-term consequences could be, you know, maybe not a great vacation in some way. The middle to long-term consequences, that risky vacation could have done surprisingly powerful things for the children, or one of the children. You know, an experience that changed their lives. Because the things that change our lives, often in another part of my philosophical exploration of the work, I've talked about tender moments. I presented some of that here. These sort of small moments in our life that are nourishing to the point of life changing. And for me, the example is Mr. Reed. Yeah, and I guess I want Mr. Reed to be part of my legacy. Mr. Reed was the word, it was when I was in high school, my last year in high school. It was a boys' high school in Australia, Manly Boys High School. And Mr. Reed was the vice principal, they were the words used. And Mr. Reed was in charge of discipline. So we were all sort of scared of Mr. Reed. Looking back, he was a short, sort of tubby man, okay? But somehow or other, you know, we would get into trouble and we would hear from Mr. Reed and we'd be called to Mr. Reed's office. And we did, you know, we were kids. And Mr. Reed called me into his office one day. You know, what have I done? What's happened? And he had a composition, as they were called, an essay I'd written. From the sort of red lines through it, because I still am a bad speller. But he looked at me and said, "Who wrote this?" Because he knew my father was a school teacher, and he knew my father was a school teacher. He said, "Who wrote this?" I said, "Well, I did." He said, "What's this? What's Much Ado About Nothing?" Because I put that in. I said, "Well, that's Shakespeare, isn't it?" And he just looked at me. I can remember incredible clarity. He just looked at me and said, "Peter, you can write." You know, I've never forgotten that. I don't think I told anybody. I don't think I told my mom and dad. But the effect on me is with me today. And in, you know, a presentation to the Philosophy Club in London, I talked about tender moments. It was a tender moment when he knew what he was delivering. Okay, I don't even know Mr. Reed's first name. You know, how long did he keep teaching? I don't know. But I know that moment sort of penetrated, and in a sort of background way, it's still there. I think, oh well, you know, I'm doing all this stuff wherever it's going, and I get into one of my sort of self-pitying compulsive lows, which I can absolutely access with some ease these days, unusefully. And that comes in, hey, you can write, you can do that. So, and that, I guess, Mr. Reed, that was hard feedback. The way we define hard feedback in Pellin, it's, hard for the person to deliver it. Mr. Reed probably had to think, am I going, because I never put you don't, as a kid, you don't put yourself in the shoes of your teacher, not what you do. But he must have made a decision that he was going to do this, that he was going to intervene in this way. He didn't say it in the classroom. He didn't say it when he handed me back my composition. He almost didn't say it in the sense of, because he was my English teacher. I'd even forgotten that to say that. He didn't do it from that place. He did it from the point of view of my future, and he chose to give me that feedback. And I chose to, I'm not very good with compliments, I certainly chose to take it in. The reason I'm putting that out is that how we make decisions, there are all sorts of influences on us. And my work on decisions, I hope, is just bringing that to the surface. The piece I wrote just today was the effect of negative memory links on the decisions we make. Whether and the negative links around guilt, shame, or rejection, or abuse. Some of the hardest negative memory links. And they affect our decisions. And what I'm trying to do in this book is say, hey, there are ways we can bring that up from the unconscious to a conscious level. So I'm being affected, just say for me, the fact I struggle with Pellen, haven't joined university, haven't joined the university stream, and haven't at times got the recognition I would have liked to get. And how does that part of me, the part of me, and for divorces, the part of me that has a lot of memory links about rejection and being rejected, how is that going to affect my decision? Because it was a very conscious decision to say, this is a book. I've never said that before. I talk about my writing, I'm writing on this, I'm writing on that, I've turned out workbook, whatever, I've turned out training manual, but I'm saying this is a book. Oops. Again, Mr. Reed's there, Mr. Reed's there, maybe sharing a cloud with David Pellin and saying, what's that book? But all my memory links around sort of not being recognized or being left, it can sort of pull me down. Can say, well, I'll put it on the back burner, or I won't make it my biggest priority, or I won't tell anyone I'm doing it. I won't put up. There's a clear decision whether I'm going to put some of this is a decision, whether I'm going to put some of the pages, and even now on my tongue, I want to change the word book to project. Okay, I want to say this project rather than my book. So I'll struggle. Yeah, it's a decision if I'm going to put some of the excerpts from this book on Facebook and just say a work in progress. And, you know, there's, I guess, you know, it could be sort of Gestalt 2 chair work. You know, on the one chair I'm Mr. Reed, and on the other chair, you know, all the people who said, well, Pellen's not that great for one reason or another. Yeah, Cynthia.
As you were talking about that, I was thinking about something that actually they talked about a couple when Nikki was leading the on the life forces, and you're talking about unconscious things, and something I ended up doing in terms of a goal, and I did, and just thinking about the unconscious memory links and all this stuff, and I'm not even sure what went into the decision and whether it was a good one or not. But last fall, I was doing a YouTube channel, and I was getting a video out every day. And I didn't have many views. I had maybe 20, 30 views a video. And then I did one video and I got hundreds of views. I mean, that's still not big in terms of YouTube. I mean, that's still really minuscule. But then I did one more video afterwards. And then I just decided, you know what, it is a lot of effort. It's a lot of work. And I have a lot of other things to do. Now, at the same time, speaking of writing a book, I also had decided I was going to start writing my book. And actually, the book was on actually the first 6 episodes of my video is what inspired. I was actually I've been wanting to write a book for years, but this actually put focus on where I was writing about. And then I stopped doing and I'm still not quite sure if this was a decision that was made, as a good decision in terms of evaluating hurt and purpose. I'm also suspecting there was like the unconscious, people saw me, so now I have to go back and hide, and this is, so I guess that's, we talked about, performance, and I know I have a lot of issues around performance life force. I mean, I have some, I just, it's very muddled and it's very complicated, and it's very, when I get recognition for something, I mean, I've had a pattern all my life. If ever I've gotten recognition, I either do something to destroy it, or I stop doing it, or I go back and hide. So, so that was kind of, I don't know what point I was trying to make, but I guess I'll
No.
then.
That's absolutely right. I think I really want to open the thing of decisions up, because, and it's interesting you're bringing in the life forces there, because it's almost classic caring life force. There are certain positive highs that we can't stand. They're too uncomfortable. And we have a hard time with we have a hard time with positive recognition at times, because if I look at it, my son Gabriel had something similar going on, that he brought it home. Okay, he had a teacher, English teacher, who told him he could write. So Mr. Reed, and this is why I made a great deal about Mr. Reed's tender moment, that affected me, it affected my son. And, that's his career. his career is with writers. He decides who's on Audible or not. It's a pretty big deal. So there is, and that I guess, because I haven't put everything into this book on decisions, and I haven't put the life forces in there, and that may end up not working. I'm not sure. I'll have to see. But I did, I did talk about, those short-term, middle-term, long-term, and because one of the reasons I got into I want the book to have a certain discursive sort of quality, because decisions are really weird on one level. I use the example of the family that takes a risky holiday and something happens for a child that changes the child's life. But one of the reasons my words about decisions is ambitious, and that's about responsibility. Because I'm not there yet, but one of the things I'm saying is it's not fate, it's not the gods. I'm sort of quoting the Greeks who were saying it's fate and the gods. And I'm saying, no, it's when men and women who make decisions, okay? It's men and women who make decisions that cause sort of catastrophe. We were talking last time about there are those few moments in the history of America and the history of the South where it could have gone differently. Cynthia.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't, when you're talking about it's not fate, it's not the gods, it's our decisions. I have a little, I find myself a little trouble because, it's one thing to say if you're well, one thing, there are things that happen that will affect your decision. I mean, your house could burn down, there could be there's a lot of things you have no control over. I mean, I know some of the environment has human, but some of it doesn't. But also in society, your social status and where you are makes a big impact on not everybody is able to make, you're not necessarily, if you've got a single mother who's barely making enough money, who can't get a job, who's trying to get a job. I mean, it's different now. I mean, single mothers can they still make less than men. Yes, you do have the AOCs, but that's rare. I mean, it's not, if you're not privileged, if you don't have money, frankly, if you're not a white man, your decisions are going to be limited.
Yes.
Regardless, I mean, so some of it's fate, some of it's where you were born, some of it's your social class. I mean, yes, I do believe, this is where my own work on fate and free will as an astrologer, this is like one of the biggest topics everybody has to deal with because but my own thing is yes, you always have the choice to try to be as good as you can be in your circumstances. I think that choice, regardless, you have.
In any way, want to deny, how people are constrained. I mean, it just went through my mind. Say one of the people who was observing those 9 seconds, 9.5 seconds, was tall, he's 6'2", he's white, he's a doctor, but he's a doctor in the military, okay? He could have stopped it, right? He could have stopped. Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying sort of hypothetical, you know, this sort of white, tall, medical doctor, Colonel Dr. Smythe, okay? And he's observing this and he walks in and says, stop. The people who were observing it couldn't get it to stop. So I don't disagree with you at all, and I don't in any way, you know, say I've got the right answer, you know. And if someone says it's God or it's fate, you know, I absolutely understand that. I just want to take for a time this different perspective on it, okay? And, you know, partly that's coming off what I'm reading deeply at the moment is sort of ancient Greek history, and I mean, they created beauty just to wait for generations and destroy it all. You know, attraction to hurt was to, there's another way of looking at that, another way of looking at the ancient Greeks. Anyway, something about there are ways we can look at decisions in which we can perhaps see there are different responsibilities we could take. Because there are wars that you could absolutely say were preventable. And one of them went on in Europe. It's called the 30 Years' War. And it just went on and on and on because they couldn't think of anything better to do almost. And you can go back to ancient Sicily and the, you know, fantastically beautiful cities they created, the Greeks created in Sicily. And then, you know, they just destroyed them. The same people who built them destroyed them. So it's something about the attraction to hurt and war. And then I'm coming in and saying, because the Greeks said it's fate, and I'm saying, no, people made decisions to do that. You know, that's an interest of mine. And it's an interest of mine, you know, David's concept of attraction to hurt, which is very, very unusual. And how, because I agree completely, I mean, decisions we make, you could say are totally formed by a background, and someone else can come along and say, well, all you're saying is they're totally informed by fate. So, you know, they're not easy issues, but I think I can make it practical in terms of, and what I'm saying is that, you know, the consequences of the decisions we make are very large, possibly very large in ways that we can hardly comprehend or anticipate. And given that, maybe it's worth a try to look at decision making in a different way, because there's nothing to lose, and there's certainly a lot of evidence that the unintended consequences of decisions, well, like the future, are beyond our comprehension. One of the themes I sort of hope I do run through the book on decisions is is the popular song Que Sera, Sera. Whatever will be, the future's not ours to see, Que Sera, Sera. And, you know, and that's about a girl growing up and what her can be her expectations of life. So one of the things I'm trying to do with the material and with a triangle is be able to have those, you know, large examples like war and small examples like the family, the girl growing up in a family. But Que Sera, Sera is all about a girl growing up in a family. And whatever will be, the future's not ours to see. But we still make decisions along the way. Cease.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this fits in, but what you were saying, I think our society is at this time where we're more involved. We're not just like whatever will be, will be. At least maybe it's the people like my particular middle class background, but I think there's much more of an idea that you can, that the future is more in your hands.
Yes.
And that one of the things that holds that back, at least in the United States, is secrecy in making decisions at the government level. And I think people are becoming more and more aware of how those decisions are being made or not made, and how destructive that is. And personally, I'm with a group that's working to try to go back to having Congress, rather than just the president, declare war.
Yes.
And how destructive that is, and how the secrecy is a method of control. And I think secrecy can come into play in people's lives where you're not told that you could be a writer, let's say, or you're not told you could be an astrologer. You're not told that, you know, you have lots of choices, or an actress, or I think it's more open now. And I'll just bring it back to my writing. When I wrote that book on moral injury, I really had no experience in writing a book. And the only way I got through it was with the help of a lot of people. I had a typist who was also my editor, and I had another group that was working on it. But I had a lot of doubts. In fact, I'm embarrassed almost. And so I had to keep looking at that. There's that idea of what a writer is, or what this professional is. There's kind of that stereotype that keeps us from doing things. And I realized it didn't have to be a big book. It's only like 50 pages or something like that. And I feel like there's more creativity in what we can do now. We're not pigeonholed or peg-holed into something. And we can shape what our profession is, or what we want to do. Like Cynthia, I'm really interested. I know nothing about astrology, but I think whatever you're doing sounds so interesting, how you're working with it. And so, you know, there's a lot more creativity now, I just want to say, than this box or that box.
Cynthia.
Well, actually, I want to plug is sort of where actually some of my own work in terms of this with, you know, I think there's a difference between free will and freedom of agency. And that's how I've been working with all of this. Sorry, a freedom of agency is what you can actually do in the circumstances. If you are one of my, but free will, I think it's absolute. It's whether, I mean, it doesn't matter if religion or humanism or whatever motivates, but I think things are very simple. I think there is, good and evil, and regardless of how you want to frame it, I think, and I think, we make it more complicated than it is, but I think generally deep down, most people have pretty similar ideas that are, anyways. And like on your deathbed, you have very little freedom of agency, especially if you're in a hospital bed. But you do have free will. Like one of the things I said, what you do in your last moments, do you hurry up and write a will to get back at your son who you're mad at? Do you take the time to try to bring your family together? Do you, or do you just go and don't make any choice at all? I mean, that's kind of one of the examples I use with free will versus freedom of agency. But I just saw something. It was this, I found it was on Facebook, and, and I just scrolled through and I saw it, I clicked. It was this experiment they did with a wallet, with a phone number in, and with like a little bit of money, but a lot of sentimental stuff. They did these fake wallets and they dropped them all over the place. And it was really fascinating because, I mean, this is one small study, but more than two-thirds of the wallets got returned. So most people did it. There was no difference between whether it was dropped in rich neighborhoods and poor neighborhoods. There was the same percentage from both. In fact, 2 of them were returned by homeless people, and 1 was a panhandler who returned the wallet. There was, and part of the reason I saw it because the headline was that Chicago, strangely enough, had 100% return rate. It's like, I did not see that coming. Las Vegas was middle, but it was Chicago and Salt Lake City were the 2 that had 100% return rate. But that kind of choice, I mean, everybody probably would agree that returning the wallet was a good thing to do, regardless. And it didn't matter they're religious. They thought, oh, Salt Lake City, they're the Mormons, they're nice. But because they did a questionnaire with them when they called, because they had a number, you had to call it. And it made no difference whether they were churchgoers, non-church goers, whether they considered themselves religious or not. So, but I thought that was kind of fun. And I guess the headline was Chicago was the most honest, so I checked. So.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the example, because that's the thing I'm sort of trying to get at. Okay, so someone picks up the wallet and makes the phone call, right? That's a decision, and yet there's a whole lot of stuff behind that decision. There's a whole lot of stuff behind all these people, returning the wallet, making the phone call, returning the money. Because I've had that happen to me. I've had money returned. I'm the person who lost the wallet. Okay. And in fact, when I first came to King's Lynn, and it was a very hard time for me, just after the ugliness of the divorce. And I'd been in the park just across the road, and I was struggling with shopping. And because I just moved here, I had a lot of money in my wallet. It's like 400 quid. Probably $500. So that was a lot of money in cash. And somehow or other in my model, because I wasn't familiar with the park. Anyway, I dropped it. And I went back and looked around and thought about it. I think a couple of days passed. And I just said to myself, you've lost the money, you were stupid. But at least you could go to the police, okay? Because at least you not done that, okay? So I just said to myself, you've got to not do that. I went to the police, and it was a policewoman. She looked at me hard and said, can you tell us what else was in the offer, in the wallet? I told her. She said it's been handed in. Okay. So I spent 2 or 3 days, being very self-critical, putting it that way. And finally, I did this scene, and it was just there. So that absolutely confirms what you just said. It happens. And I'm sort of saying in my thing about decision, there's a whole lot behind that. And particularly if it's decisions that don't work out, and the consequences of them can be very gray. My sort of green eggs and ham thing in the book is, it might be worth a try to look at decisions from a number of different perspectives. Okay, and I think one of the I don't think there's any doubt what you were saying, Cease. One of the motivations, even inspiration for me to write this, is the fact that these are more, hard to use the word, but hopeful, open times. And that's, people can look at this stuff. Because there's a very famous, very good novel, German novel written, I think it was written in 46, 47. It's called Alone in Berlin. And it's this couple who put leaflets, anti-Nazi leaflets, on public transport and trains and buses. That's all they did. And it was, terrifying. It was a terrifying risk for them. They did get caught. It was only the 2 of them. They weren't part of an organization. They got caught, they got tortured, they got killed. Now, that was a time when you couldn't want. Well, you couldn't question what you were saying, Sage. People can question, people can ask for openness about decisions. Pin people down for that. Because in terms of, decisions and goals, after a time, I guess the reason I sort of want to put that like this, I want to put reflection on the top of this diagram. Something about, the modern word is mindful. But, what is our life about? Of course, the material around decisions very much comes in at first with evaluating in terms of purpose and advices. And I guess there can be a way that we look at decisions from that sort of wider perspective of both hurt and purpose. Now, we take my couple who, alone in Berlin. Yes, they were doing what they were doing, and they absolutely knew that they most probably would be caught and most probably would be killed. They were doing the evaluation in terms of as well as the evaluation in terms of purpose. They were doing it.
Peter, can I just say, when you lean back in your chair, sometimes the sound isn't very clear.
Oh, sorry.
You're a bit far back.
Yeah, and also I should anyway, I have talking about decisions. I have my new MacBook Air, which should mean me on Zoom is better, but I can't get it working for Zoom. I'm still struggling with my old iPad, okay? But I made the decision to get a new MacBook Air, yeah. So thank you. And I guess what we're looking at both the sort of decision side of the triangle and then the assessment side of the triangle, which we'll be looking up ahead, is that our decisions have consequences. And then somehow that with purpose, and I guess our slogan, the best way to heal is to contribute, and the best way to heal is, the best way to learn is to teach. You know, what is the consequence of the decisions I make, and what are the consequences of my life? And I think that the point you're making, Cease, about there is a freedom to be consequential for people who could not have been consequential. You know, when we're talking about pride, you know, the necessity of pride. And I guess the German couple, Berliners, I guess it was just a pride in their humanity. You know, a pride that life does not have to be this, and the Nazism does not need to live for 1,000 years, which is what he promised everybody. So in the way that Wilkinson, I think her name is, that the author of the book on caste, black writer who wrote Warmth of Other Suns, that was one I mentioned before, which is about the migration. And that was another place where I talked about decisions. I think it was early in the writing, where one of the decisions many of us make is, where do we live? And one of the ways you could define oppression is people do not have choice about where they're going to live. And the decisions people make, about migrating to another country, migrating to another city, moving from one part of the city to another, they're decisions. And there's something to me sort of mysterious and quite wonderful how a whole lot of individual decisions accumulate into a movement. I mean, different people made individual decisions that meant that Black Lives Matter became a worldwide movement. they were individual decisions, but the individual decision to join up, it's connecting the dots, isn't it? But there have to be dots to connect. If you don't have any dots, there's nothing to connect. And individual people made decisions to take part in marches and make out of a piece of cardboard a slogan that they could carry in the march. And as I mentioned here in another forum, I looked out my kitchen window one day and there were all these people congregating in the park that's across from my kitchen window. I thought, that's strange because it's COVID. And then I had another look and I thought, God, I bet I know what that is. So I went down and was. No, this is a small, very white, sort of provincial English town. It's got a long history, but as it is now, that's what it is. And that was a Black Lives Matter demonstration. Something caught. So the individual decisions are made inside a movement, but they're still individual decisions. I don't know if I can get this point across. It's sort of important to me in terms of, in terms of having a school of thought and practice that can address the destructiveness of the humankind, but at the same time, the wonder of the humankind. And today's the last day of March, isn't it? I mean, where was your country 12 months ago? I mean, you couldn't believe it. Cynthia.
Yeah, I just had it might be kind of silly, but something from the series of games I'm playing, Dragon Quest, which I'm really liking it. But there's some of the different ways that all the different games have played out, and some of the timelines about, some of them you don't, are sort of mapped out on different timelines based on things that the protagonist did. And in fact, there's one game, Dragon Quest Builders. At the end of Dragon Quest 1, which is like an old simple game from, but you have a choice the final choice when you got the Dragon Lord is you have to go through all these journeys to get to the Dragon Lords, and you have a choice. The Dragon Lord says, if you join with me, I'll let you rule half of the world. And then you have the choice to say yes or no. Now in the game itself, it doesn't matter, because if you say that you'll do it, the game's over and you go back and you do it again. But they created a game, Dragon Quest Builders, on the eventuality that the protagonist made the wrong choice. So the world got destroyed, and Dragon Quest Builders, your job is to help build it back up because of the one choice that just came to mind as you're doing it. And they also have like a couple trilogies that are based on, in one of them, nobody here is going to play this, so I could go ahead. At the end of Dragon Quest 11, which I'm playing, you have the choice to go back in time and win, knowing something that was going to happen. You were able to win the battle, and it changes into two timelines, and there's like one trilogy based on one line, another on another. So sorry, it's kind of silly, but yeah, it reminded me of that when you're talking about the consequences of decisions and long range consequences. So thank you for indulging me on that.
No, I appreciate it, and I'm my son Nico played Dungeons and Dragons, I think when it first came out, that'd be decades ago. So I because I'm supposed to be your support partner. And I'd said that what you had to offer me was tech stuff. And I would really like to get your help in using Dungeons and Dragons to look at what it's called Magna Greca, Greater Greece. And it was Greater Greece that created the wonderful cities in Sicily. But part of Greater Greece was Pestum, which is our logo. It's the diver. It's a Greek, ancient Greek city. And most, yeah, they were all destroyed for different reasons. But I think my speculate, yeah, because a lot of this is speculative. I mean, my stuff around foster carers is speculative because I'm saying that there were foster carers before there were school teachers. There've always been foster carers. There's always been someone who picked up a child who's alone.
Actually, foster carers go back to the animal world. A mother cat will take care of any baby animal. They've taken care of mice. They've taken care of squirrels.
See, I missed the first bit of that.
A mother cat will mother almost any little furry animal that comes near them.
I didn't know that because, as Mary knows, I'm not into pets. That's just my background. I didn't grow up with it. That interests me. That interests me. And I'm saying, some of what we call our humanity came from those moments. And of course, that's drawing a lot on an author called Ayres, who wrote a series of books that are set 30,000 years ago. So slight science fiction.
I've read those. The Clan of the Cave Bear series?
Yeah,
I've read them.
Yeah, I'm a devoted fan. And that influenced me a lot. That influenced a whole lot of stuff about, where did our humanity start? Because, fast forward, quote a phrase from there to ancient Greece, the absolute worshipping of war and men who were good at war. And fast forward again to how that affected, an adoration of Homer, affected privileged white English men, and the glorification of war. And then how that went into America and certainly went into Australia. So bringing that, and I'm saying they're decisions, okay? I want to look at that in terms of decisions. So there is, going back to Caesar's point, there's a privileged group that get to make those decisions in secret. And the way, even the good guys, it went in, the War Powers Act went in because of 9/11, and it could have been specific to 9/11. But, Barack Obama wanted to hold on to it and use it for his purposes. And talk about decisions. One person, I can't remember her name, you'll know, who voted against, I think I'm right about that. One person who voted against the War Rights Act because it wasn't specific to 9/11. Just one. And now she's going to win. I must have her name. I'll look that up. One black woman, congresswoman, who has stood up all this time against the War Powers Act and wants it repealed. And I think there's a majority in the House that probably support it. And their decisions, you know, their decision. She made that decision to do that. Do you want to come in at all tomorrow?
Oh, I'm interested in you know, as you're older, you experience more disappointment, so you can start to collect more negative memory links. And I think that I myself am looking at and making any decision toward a goal, the routing in my brain and my body, because I've had too many failures, which is, I think of that as just fate or luck, bad luck. But becoming risk aversive over time, it seems to me that that's almost all, it's a huge part of the challenge to stay in the game. If you got beat too many times in a row, you know, I got my license, my MFT, but I failed the first time and the oral exam. And I know exactly why. And I was brilliant, of course. I'm sure none of you doubt that. But I had a 4.5 from one panelist and a 1.5 from the other. So there's no clear reality that we could agree on about, you know, what happened in there. But Jesus, going back in and doing that the second time, people have a 50%, you know, a 50% greater chance of failing if you fail once and go back. You really are at a disadvantage. It's not 50-50 again. And I knew one woman who had a thriving practice and had taken the test 7 times and failed. So rerouting the brain with new or positive memory links has been something that I am thinking a lot about, which is stepping back first, instead of just continuing to push forward, but to look for a different way to make an effort that doesn't feel familiar, because it really is very painful. And I think it's destructive to try something and to fail too many times.
Yeah. That really touches me, okay, and touches me in terms of this, because this is very hard to say, okay, and I think I'm okay at being recorded. But that system you described, I'm not sure I would have survived it, okay? I think I made a decision which, I guess I'm recent work, okay, here, I guess I'm proud of, that I will work best outside the system. And I guess even physically, I went a long way away. I mean, it's a large distance between Vancouver, Canada, and the Cilento of southern Italy. So I even went a large distance because, I mean, the way I'd say it now, because it's a phrase my son-in-law uses, not in my skill set. And I probably told that story boringly before, but bear with me. Because they struggled, my youngest daughter, Aisha, and her husband, and they struggled and they rented a place that was very rough on Vancouver Island. But then they started doing well. And then they had the opportunity to buy it. It really was rough, okay, need a lot of work. And Rob just turned to Aisha and said, sweetheart, it's not in my skill set. I'm really sorry. So they bought a place that didn't need doing up a lot, okay, that they could walk into, and it worked for them. And I don't know, I like the expression, it's not in my skill set, because I don't think, yeah, I know, it's a sort of Pellin type expression, isn't it? Because it's assuming there are other things that are in my skill set. That's not in my skill set. And I think there was something that was not in my skill set to work inside the system and do very well. I think I would have been squashed. And certainly at my age, you know, I wouldn't have my own school of thought and practice. That would have been, you know, diced up by some university that would have retired me 17 years ago, right? Yeah. And then, yeah, definitely. Okay. Do you want to say anything as we're finishing up, Nikki?
No, thank you. Just very interesting today.
Okay.
To add.
Well, do you want to finish up and then I'll go next?
Okay, I'm Nikki and I'm in Wimbledon, and it's still not dark yet.
No, I know. Yeah, I'm in the same country as England, the same as Nikki, the same time zone, and it's not nearly dark yet, and I love it. Yeah, tomorrow?
I'm tomorrow in San Francisco, and it's 11:30 a.m.
Right, Cynthia?
I'm Cynthia. I'm in Kankakee, Illinois, and it's 1:30 today. And this was a real exciting, and I really enjoyed today, and a lot to think about and
Mary?
relevant.
Sorry, Cynthia, I didn't want to cut you off.
Oh no, that's okay. I was thinking it's very relevant to some things that I'm dealing with right now. So thank you.
Hey, I'm Mary in Rosarito Beach, and it's just after 11:30.
Okay. Well, we'll finish there, and thanks you for coming. And I do want to, yeah, thank you for today, because it really helped me get into that stuff. And